Hi, welcome to Planning Preview for June 5th Planning Commission meeting. I'm Sean Irvin with the Planning Commission, sitting in for Larry Lutke, our chair, and I have with me today Jason Bieber from Planning and Development Services. Hi Jason, how are you doing?
Great day out there. Great weather.
Yes it is, it's beautiful. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up on our upcoming agenda for June 5th. Looking forward to that. It's a pretty long agenda. We haven't had one this long for a little while. First item on our agenda looks like it's the resolution amending the Shape Sioux Falls 2040 Comprehensive Plan. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later with Sam, and then we'll get to that at the end of the show. So We'll move on to the rest of the agenda for right now. First regular item on the agenda is a rezone from conservation and office districts to RS single family, suburban, and an RCD residential cluster development PUD. We don't see those real often. And RD1 twin home duplex at 41st and Grinnell. This must be about halfway between Sertoma and Ellis. Is that about right?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. You kind of nailed it there. This is kind of just west of the Cliff Avenue greenhouse.
Okay.
So it's a vacant parcel there. So what they're looking at doing is adjacent to 41st in Grinnell, they're looking at constructing some twin homes. And then on the north side of that, as you had indicated, we've got a request for a residential cluster PUD, which we haven't done yet, so it's kind of exciting to do something a little bit different. But really what they're looking to construct is some kind of those villa type houses on some smaller lots. And really the only thing that they're trying to vary or change a little bit is to get the actual house a little bit closer to the private street.
Oh, sure.
Yep. And then on the north side of Cliff Avenue greenhouse, there's some vacant area, and then they're looking at doing some single family, and that will kind of tie that street in and kind of continue that development and finish it out. So
for people's reference, I think when you talk about the residential cluster development, the villas, as you said, we can see some of those on the east side, for example, just north of 41st. If people aren't familiar with that, it's a very closely kind of dense occupation, but they're all single family housing units that are just right adjacent to each other, correct?
Yep, absolutely. Kind of those empty nesters that want a kind of a slab on grade, smaller lots, not a lot to take care of, just kind of a slab on grade house. So
Sure.
Okay,
good reference. Next one looks like it's the rezone from RD1 twin home duplex to the RT1 single family residential traditional at 510 South 5th Avenue. This must be just north of 14th Street, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yep, you got her there. I think it's actually just a little bit south of 14th, but pretty close. Yep. Okay. So this is one of those small infill lots that we've had left over in the core area. I think it's like 40 some feet wide. As you know, you can't build a single family house in the RD1 on a 40-foot wide lot. So the applicant is looking to rezone that to kind of that traditional district that was put in as part of Shape Places to allow development, a little bit less setbacks on these lots that are less than 50 feet wide. So,
well, these were all part of the initial plan, was to try and get some of the use of these smaller lots in a specific zoning element so that we don't have all this non-conforming stuff around town.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, I think that's great. Lets everybody know what's going on, what's anticipated, what's allowable in those areas without having all these special uses.
Yep, correct. Yep.
Okay, good to hear. Let's see, next one is a rezone from RD1 twin home duplex to RD2 townhome residential at Bonson and East Bison. This must be close to the roundabout on 69th. I drive through all the time, right?
Yes, everybody loves the 69th and Southeastern roundabout, right? Yeah, it's a little bit east of that and kind of pretty close to just south of the gymnastics place and then the new Horizon Elementary School from Harrisburg. If you guys haven't been out there, that area has actually just started. Construction has gone crazy out there with single family houses. Right. Part of these lots, as you get closer to 69th Street, the busier arterial, that's where you kind of want your little bit more higher density. So they're looking at kind of constructing some townhome, 4-unit townhome type uses. and then those will transition into this twin home into the single family as you get farther south of 69th Street. So,
Okay, makes sense. Looks like next one is rezone from RT1 single family traditional to RT2 townhome residential. Sounds familiar. On 1303 South Phillips, this must be the west end of that 21st Street Boulevard that's past McKinnon, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
You're pretty close to that. This is one of the ones that I think we've done. We do 5 or 6 of them every year. One every other month. These are some of those non-conforming uses that are in the core area. Some of the houses that have been, converted from single family to 2, 3, 4 units over the last 50 years or so. And as part of Shea Places, those were rezoned to single family. So we're just really trying to get those as the conforming use. This has been a 4-unit townhome or 4-unit converted house for a long time. So we're just trying to rezone it to get it really conforming to the current use of the property.
It's always tough when we do a comprehensive plan to make sure everything aligns with what its current use is rather than just kind of blanketing a whole area, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially when you don't have the time to look at every parcel and look back through the permits. And that's really what we do. And a lot of these we find when somebody's coming in, say, hey, I want to get a permit for a bathroom, or I want to, do some interior remodel. And that's where we catch a lot of these. We go back through the records, and if we can prove that it's been a converted house for a certain amount and it was converted legally, then that's really where we have them rezone. And obviously we don't charge them the fee, but we go through that process to get them conforming. So
right, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see, next thing on our agenda is, rezone from RD1 twin home duplex to O office by East Cattail and west of Red Oak Drive. I don't even think that intersection actually exists just yet, but soon. It must be over by Rosa Parks, I'm guessing.
Yep,
right?
just west of Rosa Parks. If you've kind of seen just south of Doug Allen's constructed a lot of those villa-type houses that we talked about, Z-lot houses on there. So really they have a user that's looking at constructing an office on the office part. Over the last, when they've been platting, there was a little tiny triangular remnant piece that was on the parcel zoned office, but it's zoned RD1, so they're just trying to clean up that little tiny, it's a very small little piece to try and clean it up so the user can construct a new building on there. So, yep.
That sounds good. Next one is RS single family going to C2 commercial neighborhood streetcar district at 4801 East Linden Lane. I'm guessing this is just south of Arrowhead Parkway. I drive through there all the time.
Yep, you got it just east of the Shopco kind of plaza that's over there. As you have been out there, as you know, Arrowhead Parkway got widened last year, and I think they're finishing up most of the work this year.
Still got a little bit of median stuff they're working on, I see, yes.
So I believe the signalized intersection is going to be Gordon Drive. So there's a parcel here that's zoned commercial, but there's a couple little pieces of it, a couple sections of it that still have RS on them, so they're trying to clean that specific part up. So for a future, I think a retail center, strip center.
And this is all a pretty heavily commercial area, becoming more and more popular all the time, I can tell.
Yep, it's a heavily commercial, and then it kind of transitioned as you go east there and south, you get that kind of existing single family neighborhood, but there are some commercial uses adjacent to
Very few residential properties along that street anymore.
Yeah.
It seems to all be kind of slowly converting as it goes.
Yep. I think that's kind of the overall plan for that whole area. So,
Okay. Let's see. Next thing is a rezone from RS single family suburban to C2 commercial neighborhood and streetcar at 57th and Old Yankton Trail. This must be just west of Bridges on 57th. That development, I'm guessing.
Yeah, if you've kind of gone down there, it's right next to where the city has the bike trail that goes underneath 57th Street. Right. So the city kind of last couple months did some land swap with this property owner, and we swapped this little triangular piece for some property that we're using for our bike trail. And so this little remnant triangular piece is zoned single family right on 57th Street. So they're looking to zone it to commercial, which the adjacent property is, and then combine them all together. So,
Okay, very good. Let's see, next thing on our agenda looks like it's a rezone from RS single family to RD1 Twin Home Duplex at 1702 South Phillips. This must be just north of 26th Street and a couple of blocks west of McKinnon Park.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. And this one's a similar request to number 5 that we talked about. As we went back through the records, it's an existing duplex property, not single family. Zone single family, so similar request. We're just cleaning up, and the applicant and owner is looking to clean up the property and get the use conforming instead of a non-conforming use. So
okay, good to know. Let's see, we've got a few conditional use permits. Looks like the first one of those is for on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment at 1038 North Minnesota. This must be about Brookings Cross Street, I'm guessing, a little farther north at a strip mall, right?
Yep, it's at the strip mall on the east side of Minnesota Avenue. And there's an existing ethnic grocery store there. And I believe they have kind of like a little service counter deli type thing. And so the applicant's looking at just being able to offer beer and wine as part of getting a sandwich.
It's part of the food service that they're doing there.
At the grocery store. Similar to the Hy-Vee's, just not on that same scale. So
Sure. Okay, good to know. Let's see, next one, that conditional use permit is a full service restaurant with beer and wine at 1200 South Minnesota Avenue. Must be just south of 20th Street or thereabouts, is that right?
Yep, okay. Pretty close. This is the old, well, everybody probably remembers it as the KFC, and then it was Jim's Burgers. And now I think it's Aberrado's Mexican restaurant has gone in there. And they're just, as you had indicated, looking to serve beer and wine as part of their menu. So,
Okay, very good. Let's see, next conditional use is to allow gravel operational vehicle storage at 5413 North 7th Avenue. I know this must be just east of Catfish Bay, I'll bet you, right? Okay.
Yep, absolutely got it up there just north of the Interstate I-90. It's just kind of an industrial area, and they're looking at just utilizing part of the lot for some vehicle storage just on crushed gravel and crushed asphalt instead of paving the whole thing. So
right, because normally city code requires that to be paved in either asphalt or concrete, correct?
Yeah, absolutely for vehicle storage or motor vehicles. If you get into some of the heavy equipment stuff, you know, the big tractors and things like that, or outdoor storage, those can be on gravel, but for motor vehicle storage or vehicle storage, those actually have to be hard surface. So
okay, and then as a conditional use permit, then often maybe the commission might require fencing or other things to help control dust from blowing and things like that, right?
Screening of the property, absolutely.
Sure. Okay, so that'll be part of our consideration.
Yep, on June 5th.
Sounds good. And then the last one on the regular agenda, or on the full agenda, is the alternative site plan for a level C buffer yard at 1301 East Austin. Now these alternative site plans, I know we've been looking at a lot of these, and these are kind of built into the Shape Sioux Falls system to help people have other alternatives to kind of recognize maybe wet areas or other special conditions that particular site needs to adjust maybe one of the requirements for, right?
Yep, absolutely. So this one is specifically the St. Francis House, their new structure that they're building. As you build a large structure in the middle of a core area, you run real short on ground. So what they're looking at doing is on the east side is kind of doing their buffer yard in an alternative way, maybe a little bit less of a setback, but providing a bigger fence, a bigger berm, and more landscaping. So that's really one of the great things about Shape Places is to allow them to have that flexibility and go for a public hearing, but to do a buffer yard in an alternative way, as long as it meets the same or better than what is allowed by the ordinance.
Really, it's about recognizing intent rather than the specific letter of the requirements. So that way we can help protect neighbors, and that's really what buffer yards are all about.
Yep, right? and it's a great way also to work with the neighborhood on maybe they want to see this or that kind of an element. So it's a great addition to the zoning code.
Sure. Let's see, and then I think that's right by Lady Guadalupe Church, right?
Just to the
east. That's what I was thinking it was. Well, I think that's a great example of how really we're looking for. In fact, I'd encourage everybody watching the show, if you're thinking that you want to learn something more about one of these items, be sure to come to the Planning Commission meeting. We want you there so we can hear your voice, and your voice really does make a difference in our decisions. And we really enjoy hearing from people and hearing about, even if they have questions for you, Jason, they can call in advance to ask questions or make comments, and you'll share those with us at our briefing, right?
Yep, absolutely. If they have any questions or comments, 367-8888 is the main planning line over at Planning Development Services. We'd be happy to answer any of the questions that they have prior to the meeting or any information about the public hearing process. So
sounds great. Anything else to add before we bring Sam on?
I don't think so, not this month. So it's good to have you back for pinch hitting for Larry for 1 month. So
okay, well, thank you for having me back. I really enjoy this. Well, we'll move on to talking briefly with Sam Trebilcock to talk a little bit about the 2040 Comprehensive Plan in just a second.
The City of Sioux Falls has an easy way for you to help your community. Simply download the City of Sioux Falls mobile app. The app can be used to ask a question or to report a variety of nuisances like potholes, graffiti, streetlights not working, abandoned vehicles, and more. You can even upload a photo with your report. Every report is immediately routed to the appropriate team so they can quickly respond. In addition to tracking your reports, the app allows you to view reports submitted by other users and learn when they've been resolved. Go to the App Store or Google Play stores and download the City of Sioux Falls app today.
Hi, we're back with Sam Trebilcock, talking a little bit about the first item on our agenda coming up on June 5th, the item for the 2040 Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Hi, Sam. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you, Sean?
Doing well.
Good.
Just wanted to talk a little bit about that first item. I know a comprehensive plan is kind of the roadmap that we use at the city to know what is appropriate planning and what is appropriate zoning throughout the city. There's always going to be some minor adjustments here and there, and this is one of those minor adjustments, right?
That's exactly correct. So you're right. The comprehensive plan is kind of your big picture, looking at the community out, in this case, to the year 2040. And we're looking at where the city is going to develop, when it's going to develop, and what it's going to develop in terms of land uses. And in the case of our amendments, that's what we're looking at making some changes to. As we work with our different departments and work with our stakeholders and our developers and our citizens, we have to take into consideration that every so often you do need to make adjustments.
So what are you kind of the primary categories of the things that are going to enter into this amendment? Could you kind of cover those just real briefly?
Yeah, so the maps that we're updating are, first of all, our what we call our tier maps, or our growth tier maps. And those maps we put together, there's basically 4 of them. And it includes where and when sewer would develop, when and where water and roads will be developing in our growth areas, and then where and when our facilities and our drainage areas will be developing. And so we're making adjustment and changes to those areas to help put together, which is our that 4th map, which is our development areas. And the whole idea is basically an intersection of all those maps to make sure that we are ready for with all the types of infrastructure and facilities for knowing when we can develop and where we can develop in those areas. So
really the maps and their development is trying to anticipate where the growth demand is and how easily or how efficiently the city can reach those areas for that future development, right? So this is more about maybe phasing than it is about specific zoning things. Is that right?
This part of it is, yes.
Right.
So you're looking at, where can the city most efficiently provide sewer and water and roads, and doing it in a phased manner. So we do it, in this case, what I mentioned earlier was the tiers. So those tiers are put together in 3 different tiers. And the first tier you'll see on the map is blue, and the blue areas are 0 to 5 years. So within that 5-year period, that's areas that we would expect that we'd be able to grow to if a developer's ready, that they could come in and start developing with going through the process that you talk a lot with Jason about, the zoning, the annexation, everything else. But we would be ready for that in that area within 0 to 5 years. So then the second area is that green area, and that green area is within 5 to 15 years. And that's when and the areas that we'd be ready to provide services in that area. And then the last area is that tier 3 area, which is the orange area, which is that 15 to 25 year period tier. So that's kind of how we work it, and it's worked really well. The developers know what's coming then. Sure. With areas that are going to be available for development. The citizens know too, the landowners know. And then also it's really important for the city to know so that we can incorporate it into our CIP.
Sure, and then it helps the landowners and everybody that already have those lands to know that this development isn't going to happen instantaneously. Just because somebody wants to build something that's a mile and a half away from any services doesn't mean they can do it tomorrow.
Right.
It means there's a reasonable amount of time that we have to do some advanced planning to make sure taxpayers are protected, that we can ultimately afford to do those things with the city and make sure that development can happen in a sensible way, right?
Right, yeah, that's exactly correct.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What are some of the other amendment things beyond just those maps?
So really it just is the maps.
It is the maps,
Yeah,
okay.
so the other map that we're updating is the future land use map. And the reason that was so important is because as a part of this update, we're actually adding some areas to our growth areas.
Okay,
so there's some areas that were not in any one of our tiers that we were adding in those areas. If you see the maps and look at them, there's areas on the south, kind of near that tier interchange area, over to the east, over to about Western Avenue, kind of along County 106. That area there, we were hearing and experiencing development pressures in that area. Also, there's going to be infrastructure there. We're looking at bringing the Veterans Parkway into that area eventually, and so that's one area. There also the area and more in the next 5 to 10 years is that area to the west, and that area is being added to our growth area. Again, we saw the need for some additional development needs there, and sewer could be provided in that area when we looked at it a little more carefully. So that was added. That's added to the tier maps. It's also needs to be included and updated as part of the future land use map. So we're indicating where the employment centers are going to go within that area. Sure. In that south area, you'll see a number of business parks that we're adding, so that people know that would be appropriate. The kinds of land uses that would be appropriate, or would it be low density or residential? Or in some cases, it might be another type of a commercial employment center.
Right. And as we often do, we try to anticipate where those things most likely are going to be, and we'll help encourage those things to be in those areas. But as we've seen over the years, there's always requests to maybe do things a little bit different because particular developers think there's a real demand for this, and so we need to make a little bit of an adjustment as we go to make sure that meets the demand, right?
Yeah, and those employment centers absolutely allow for that. I mean, before, years ago, we would very specifically lay out kind of what the future zoning was going to be. Well, that didn't really allow for that kind of flexibility. So when we brought in the employment center concept, it allowed for that. And so that's certainly something that we're very much looking.
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So what would you see as the next update for the comprehensive plan? I know we try to do those at regular intervals. When do you see that next one?
So really, we look at the plan, at least in this area, the tier maps and the future land use. We look at it every year. Mm-hmm. We look at it to see if it's updated enough, and we're working with our different departments, engineering, with fire, with parks and libraries, everybody, to make sure that we're still all on the same page. This time we saw we needed to make some updates, so we're always looking at it. But typically you look about every 5 years for a minor update where you're kind of looking at everything and you start looking to make sure your policies and your guiding documents for, because obviously, and you know this, that the comprehensive plan is the guiding document for the zoning ordinance, and it's got to be consistent with each other. So you got to make sure that that's still being done. So in the next 4 years. Okay,
4 more years or so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. And then it'll be the 2045 comprehensive plan at that point. Sure. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll look forward to the process to give input to that. I'm sure the public will be asked for some of that input at specific meetings as we prepare that new document, and we always look forward to that kind of input.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Sam?
No, I appreciate the time though.
Okay, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us for this planning preview. Our upcoming meeting for the Planning Commission is on June 5th. We hope you join us at 6 p.m. at Carnegie Town Hall. Would love to hear feedback, input. We do have a section in our agenda for public comments that are not on the agenda. So if you'd like to address the Planning Commission during that time, you're welcome to do that as well. We want to hear from our citizens. We want to hear from everybody because your input really helps us make excellent decisions in the best interest of Sioux Falls. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you then.